Today's going to be multi-topic, so maybe I'll put a time marker in the description. And let's start with Kenosha. So with Rittenhouse, like I've seen a lot of people talking about the Moltov cocktail and whether or not that exists. Go back and watch my video. Why did the shooter shoot? Why did Kenosha Shooter shoot? Because I slowed it down, I darkened it up. Light reflecting off a bag is what people keep saying, but look at how the lit Molotov cocktail looks when I darken the screen as compared to refracting the light off of car windows and other objects that are on the screen at the same time. It doesn't look anything like it. It looks like fucking fire. I know what fire is. It's fire. I don't know why they're trying so hard to say that he didn't throw a Molotov cocktail at him, because what's the difference? He was also chasing him. He was also on top of him. He was also twice his fucking size, and he could have had an implement in his hand. It could have been a fucking rock. When somebody twice your size has you fucking cornered, they call that disparity of force. So, you know, in a sense, the Molotov is less relevant. It's more relevant to me because it's fucking heinous, because it shows the mindset. But when you add in that it looks like now what we've seen is that Kyle was in the process with other people putting out a dumpster fire that some of the protesters, rioters, whatever had started, it makes even more sense that there would be a fucking readily accessible Molotov cocktail. So maybe I'll just link that in real quick right here. Darkened and slowed down. So you tell me, what does that look like? Right? So that's other new information, that he was putting out extinguishing a fire in a dumpster. Also, I'd seen the pictures of him there earlier during the day cleaning graffiti. I also knew that he was carrying stuff additional to his rifle, such as his medical bag, but now there's been a longer version of that video than I even saw. That's the one where he says, yeah, I just got maced, and the guy said something about deadly force, and he said, no, I didn't respond to it because we don't have anything but deadly force, and I wasn't going to respond to mace with deadly force. I guess I could link that in real quick here.
From the citizens, and I just got pepper sprayed by a person in the crowd.
So you had non-lethal, but you didn't respond.
Out here, obviously, you're armed, and you're in front of this business we saw burning last night. So what's up?
So people are getting injured, and our job is to protect this business. And part of my job is to also help people. If there's somebody hurt, I'm running into harm's way. That's why I have my rifle, because I need to protect myself, obviously. But I also have my med kit.
Right, and so if you haven't put fucking two and two together, that's why he's wearing those latex gloves. Now, I think that's kind of fucking dumb, because obviously the latex gloves aren't clean, or are not going to be any cleaner than your hands. So unless he had another pair of latex gloves in his little bag there, let's assume he did, because that'd be the smarter thing to do. And then he had them on his hands in the first place to not get garbage on him, because he didn't, I mean, I don't know. It's weird that he was wearing the latex gloves. It would make more sense for him to put them on if he was medically attending to somebody. But then again, I don't like the feeling of shit on my hands. Maybe it didn't bother him, and that was to remind him, take that off, clean hand, clean glove. Don't know. Maybe it was to make people feel more comfortable because of coronavirus. But he was there with a medical bag to help people. He clearly stated that the rifle is for his protection. So, other new-ish piece of information, I've been just doing a little bit more looking into the law. From what I can understand, he's now said legally, because the charges are out, he's now said legally that he did not bring his long gun from home, that he got it from a friend or a relative who lives in the state of Wisconsin. So this really comes down to if he was with his parent or guardian or someone in his family of legal age, or if he had a Wisconsin hunter safety permit, then he'd be allowed to carry that gun open publicly. So it looked like he was with his family, but was separated at the time that this incident happened. If they were together by the dumpster when he was putting out the dumpster fire and him being separated from his family was a result of being chased, then that should be taken into account, and it wouldn't affect him if he happens to have a Wisconsin hunter safety thing because he hunts and a certificate. Could be 14 with one of those and carry a long gun. I say long gun because it's, you can't have a sawed-off or compact AR. You can have any type of rifle or shotgun that's not sawed-off or compact. So as far as that charge, that's what's going on there. And as far as logically, this is what I said before. These are libertarians, right, who are pro-gun and, pro-less government, et cetera, and they were a group of integrated, I just say integrated, not because, people don't know, I guess I'm going to sidestep here. You don't say things like, it's integrated since the fucking 60s if you live down south and you were a fucking racist hillbilly. But nowadays, it's coming back and you have to make a point of saying shit like it's integrated so people know that you're not talking exclusively about one race or another. So pardon me if I sound like I've gone back in time fucking 60 fucking years, but these circumstances and the way you have to talk with this narrative, that's I have to say it that way. So he was with an integrated libertarian group. I didn't think that they would go around like that, knowing they would potentially have to use their weapons without researching the law. And they probably figured, a little bit of a gray area with the kid, but worst case scenario, he'll be with his uncle, which is what I heard, he was with his uncle. He'll be with him, and it won't be such a big deal. Of course, they figured the worst they probably have to do is fire a shot off, safely into the ground or something as a deterrent. They probably didn't actually have to expect that they were going to have to put a round into somebody. So, in any event, I'm speculating, of course, and I ain't a fucking lawyer, but that's the update on that. The only other additional thing that I would say, as we spoke before about the criticism, well, I'll talk about the other shootings too, because he missed a guy too. That guy's fucking lucky. The first guy that hit him was the guy with the skateboard, took a fucking round. Now, I've seen a couple pictures of that from the side, and the hit with the skateboard wasn't quite as hard as it could have been, right? Right? He definitely went for the rifle, though. You don't, there's only certain circumstances in which you disarm someone. One is if you're a police officer and you're taking the person in and you have to disarm them. And the other is if you are trying to take a gun away from a killer. Because when you can legally carry, you can't just walk up to somebody who's legally carrying and say, I'm going to fucking disarm you. I'm going to take your gun. I'm going to take your knife. That's actually an act of aggression. So regardless of what this dude or his friends thought about he was trying to be heroic and take the gun away, that you don't fucking take people's weapons away. And if they've murdered somebody, let's say they're legal carry and then they've murdered somebody with their legal carry, which usually doesn't happen with legal carries. It's usually illegal carries. If that happens, then once that's a criminal act, then you can play police. You can make a citizen's arrest. You can attempt to take the weapon away, but you got to remember it's the fucking weapon. So even though that skateboard hit wasn't as hard as it could have been, dude, skateboard's totally a deadly weapon. I mean, look at all the stuff that's been damaged with skateboards just that we've seen. Skaters and skateboards have played a big part of this. Breaking police car windows, breaking a shit ton of store windows, hitting people. So, yeah, dude, skateboard's a fucking deadly weapon. For sure. You can fucking use a skateboard as a deadly weapon. I mean, I could walk around with a fucking club and get the same effect. Except if I'm walking around with a club, people are going to say, look at this motherfucker, and I am, identified as potentially hostile. Walking around with a skateboard, though, you technically can't say nothing, but for sure they're a weapon. Next guy comes at him, tries to kick him. I think he hit his face, may not have hit him as hard as he could have, but he hit him a little bit and kind of whiffed and went past. He shot at that guy and missed. Then the third guy is the guy with the fucking blown off bicep, but the more and more that I see every single possible angle that everybody's freeze framed and made screenshots of, the dude definitely, there's one picture of him with his hand up, and his other hand looks like it's almost as flush as his front hand, but it's not quite as flush. Every other picture I saw looks like this hand's back. So it's like he drew his gun, went like this, thought about saying, I'm going to put my gun down, and then went like that. That's what you call a false surrender. It's a tactic, for sure. So, more interesting though. Somebody else caught this. I didn't see this. So right after the Molotov cocktail was thrown at him, there's gunfire. It's on the left side of the screen, and you have to go frame by frame to slow it down to see the muzzle flash. Somebody else did that on their video. I haven't done that, so maybe I can link theirs in just real quick here as a screen. All right. So somebody else shot at him. Obviously, they missed. Don't know what they hit. It's possible that they shot up. Shooting up, by the way, is not a safe way to discharge a weapon as a word of warning. You want to shoot into the ground. If you shoot up, you got to remember the bullet is going to fucking come down somewhere. Regardless, though, he has somebody barreling down on top of him is twice his size, and there's a gunshot coming from a different place. He can hear. I'm sure he didn't see it. He can hear it. Where it hit, I don't know. I mean, the self-defense is just fucking obvious times 10. I'm just talking about somebody else shot. But what I'm going to move on to now is, who the fuck was that? I mean, if it was another militia member, let's just be realistic. If it was another militia member, they'd be on the fucking cross, crucified, just like fucking Kyle's about is. So it wasn't a militia member. It was somebody else. No mention of him, no mention of finding him. And even more interesting to me, as he is shooting at the three people on the ground, the one he killed, the one he missed, and the one he injured, there is a cluster of gunfire. And I can't remember off the top of my head. I'll link it in right here. And try to listen. It's like 16 other shots. Starting there. Those last shots were not Kyle either. I don't know what the fuck that was. Who the fuck and where the fuck was that? I haven't even heard anybody talk about that. I mean, that's a cluster. I really do not think that's fireworks. I'm not certain. It's very close to where that area is. And I don't see why anybody who had fireworks would think it's a good idea to light fireworks off right now. Most of those people were panicking and running or watching, etc. That was more gunfire. Where's that person? Who the fuck was that? Again, if that was another militia member, they'd be on the fucking cross as well. Oh, look at this fucking armed, crazy Nazi, alt-right, Trump supporter, fucking white supremacist, blah, blah, blah. So it obviously wasn't one of them, right? That was somebody else with a gun, firing off a lot of shots. 2 other shootings. Potentially 2 other shooters. Could have been the same guy, though you can definitely see in the first picture that, well, I shouldn't say definitely. It looks pretty clear that in the first picture that guy is firing a handgun. So that's definitely a different caliber. That other set of shots is definitely a cluster of them. Who the fuck was that? No word on that. Not a word, right? I would also mention that Biden has now decided that he's going to come to Wisconsin to visit Jacob Blake, I guess, maybe to give a speech. Who knows what he's going to end up doing. He said it anyways. Now Trump's going to come here too. Now, this isn't new for Trump. He goes to disaster areas. He has also reached out to quite a few people who have been, people's families who have been victim of violence. So, is he coming to talk to Blake? Is he coming to go to Kenosha? Regardless, it's kind of normal for him to do that. Biden, however, it's a little bit a little bit odd because the DNC was just here 2 weeks ago and he didn't want to come here for that because it was too dangerous. But now it's not too dangerous. He's theoretically going to go into a hospital where Jacob Blake is, where the risk of coronavirus and the risk of transmitting coronavirus to people who are more susceptible to infection is higher than it would be at the fucking DNC, where there's going to be only basically reporters and a few other people in the room. But it's not as big of a risk to do that. Why do I mention this? Just because the governor said, Trump, you shouldn't come here. I don't know why. That's what he said. I haven't heard him say Biden, you shouldn't come here. I don't know. Maybe they're not doing exactly the same thing. So, I bring up this shit about the shooters because then let's go to Portland, right? So, first off, the guy that got shot, his nickname was Jay. I forget what his actual first name was, and then his last name I forget. But it came out after he was shot that he was a member of Patriot Prayer. I'll get back to Patriot Prayer in a minute. So, the video that exists of this dude getting shot is shot from across the street, relatively grainy, so it wasn't a very high quality camera, couldn't do good in low light situations. And as compared to so many other things that we've seen just a couple days before in Kenosha, that's the only video that surfaced. What? How's that work? No other videos of this have popped up with everybody with their fucking camera up all the time. No other videos. No suspect. No interest generally by the government in trying to find out who that was, right? No interest. Why? Well, anyways, this group of people went to Portland, and they were calling them Trump supporters, and I thought maybe that was a lie, but a lot of them did have Trump stuff on there, so I'm not sure how they organized this. I just know that Patriot Prayer was a portion of the group that went there. They weren't the whole group, right? And I had to look up Patriot Prayer, right, because I hadn't even heard of this one yet. So the first thing I will tell you, this should be a huge indicator right here, okay? A couple of weeks ago, the Facebook decided that they were going to kick all kinds of groups off of Facebook. They kicked off everything that they called QAnon. They kicked off stuff that they claimed were Antifa pages. And most notably, they kicked off the UCA. And the UCA, at this point, is pretty much had positive media in Utah. I mean, they're not getting positive media from social media from the BLM and Antifa people, but mainstream media has been giving them relatively positive commentary, and they have streamed a few things that they've done, and they look well organized and disciplined, and they have tried to prove that they support everybody's right to protest, and etc., etc. The point being, they're not a group that should have been kicked off. They were kicked off specifically because I saw the message that was sent to the leader of the group that said that they were kicked off for inciting, potential to incite violence, and for being a hate group. Absolute nonsense. So they're off there. QAnon, which I don't follow as much, but I've seen a little bit about it. All their pages are off there. And I mean, I've read a couple of those pages, like glanced at them. I never joined one, but I've seen like the ones that are public. And some of the shit they say is a little, conspiratorial, but dude, not everything has to do with, in fact, most of what they say, most of every one of them doesn't have anything to do with violence. So I'm not sure why they're off there. And it's not hate speech either. So, because Zuckerberg just told the Senate and Congress a few weeks ago, I wouldn't silence anybody's right to speak. As long as it isn't hate speech, I'd let it go. Definitely wouldn't pick a political position. In any event, Patriot Prayer still has a Facebook group. I couldn't believe that. I was like, wow. The way they were talking about him in every article that I read. Alt-right, Nazi, fucking white supremacist and Trump supporters roll into Portland, cause riot and chaos. And I'm like, oh boy. So I'm like, well, this is weird if the paper and everybody's calling them so far right, you know? So I'm looking through the page a little bit to see. I read Wikipedia, first of all. Wikipedia was not very generous in their description of them, equivalated them to the Proud Boys, which I don't think the Proud Boys are really that bad either. They're just, their creed is, I don't want to say silly, but I mean, it's based on just being a man and being a normal man and not being a beta. So what? That's all there is to it. There's no racism in it, even though people always try to say that they're racist and all. It's just about being a normal male. So either way, though, it's not that deep. Let's say Patriot Prayer is a little bit different. They're a little bit more creed established, definitely pro-America. But I watched a video with one of the regional leaders where he went to a small protest. Must have been in a red area. Went to a small protest, tried to get shouted down by a couple of quasi-Antifa that he ignored long enough to get them to go away. And then he talked to a few BLM people, actually listened to him, but I listened to the message that he was sending. And it was a very inclusive message. He said, here's what I have to say. Here's what I think would work. Definitely work better than defunding the police or this or that and that. I know you guys might not want to hear this right now, but I'd like you to think about it, and I'd like you to let it set in a little bit, and I really hope in the future that we can get together and talk, because this is about us and our future, and I want us to all get along. But dude, the guy couldn't have been much more nice, and he couldn't have been much more attempting to be much more inclusive. So I'm like, this is what this group's about? Like, okay, so they're fucking pro-Trump, obviously, they, you know, but that... I don't even see a whisper of white supremacy, alt-rightism, fucking, etc. And they certainly didn't, while I'm sure a lot of them are armed, I certainly didn't see any aggressive military, etc. So I'm like, so these guys essentially were a parade that went through Portland. So now, the other thing that we haven't had answered yet, because there's no other footage. Because, you know, some people don't like to talk about shit. But then once there's video and there's a little bit out there, like, fuck it, I better clear it up, man. So one thing we haven't figured out yet is why this guy got shot. Was he separated from the group? Because they didn't shoot like 5 people, and there didn't appear to be anybody around him in the immediate vicinity except for protesters, right? And why was he there? Was he out instigating trouble, trying to beat people up? I mean, I'm going to guess no, but I don't know. Now, what was he doing? Was he taking pictures of stuff? Was he out recording by him? So whatever he was doing, we don't know. No other cameras have emerged. No other angles of the shooting have emerged. No before or after footage with this guy has yet emerged. And I'm wondering if maybe this group has some footage and they're not releasing it because they want to see what happens with the investigation. That's possible. I'm a little surprised, though, that they haven't released anything. But you would think, this guy being a big bad piece of shit, Trump supporter, white supremacist, alt-right, racist, etc., that there'd be some other social media from the left going, look at this piece of shit, you know, Sieg Heiling, look at this fucking piece of shit screaming at protesters. Look, but there isn't any of that. So, where's that gun in? Just like the people in Kenosha, right? When it comes to the fucking left, when they're shooting, I'm assuming the people in Kenosha that were shooting were left. I told you why, because if it was militia, it'd be all over the fucking news. When it comes to them shooting, everybody's quiet. There's no talk about investigation or finding out who it was, what they were doing. This dude shot in Portland, we've gotten no juice, no detail. I mean, they were fucking forcing so many details about Kyle when he shot in Kenosha. Everything, nothing, right? So we'll see how that goes. That's all I got to say about that. But I am going to segue into a third topic, okay? And it does tie in, and that is about my friend Bernell, who has been dead now for 6 weeks. Just under 6 weeks or just over 6 weeks. One suspect was named shortly after it happened with some fucking terrible grainy footage of the guy covered head to toe. 0.9 miles. Please watch my video, Who Shot Bernell? I got a part 1 and part 2. Nothing. Crime Stoppers has now offered a $20,000 reward for information. If you don't know anything about Crime Stoppers, that means completely anonymous. Still nothing. Why do I say that? Well, if you watch those videos, you'll see that I explain that the neighborhood he lives in is definitely sympathetic to the BLM and the Antifa, if not filled with people that are in those organizations. And it's possible that some people know something and don't want to say anything because they're afraid. They won't even call the fucking tip line, apparently. I guess they're that afraid. Somebody would figure out they're the only person that could have that information, or they don't want their security camera or personal cell phone camera images used publicly because someone will go, I know where the fuck that is. I know what house that is. But that's how serious it is. This dude wasn't killed randomly. He wasn't killed by somebody who heard something he said and then the next day decided, I'm going to go over there and fucking shoot this guy because I don't like what he said yesterday or what he said earlier today. This was planned out. This was by someone that wasn't just mad at Bernell. It was by someone who wanted to silence him and his message. There's no fucking doubt in my mind. And there are 2 homicide detectives, from what I understand, assigned to the case. I'm sure one of them has to be the lead on it, or maybe they're partners. I don't really know how homicide works. I shouldn't pretend I do. I just know that there are two that you can call to find out information. And dude, they don't want to talk to nobody. They don't want to, I'm not going to say they don't want to solve the case. I'm not saying that. But I think they're done with it. They don't have any interest. They feel like, fuck it, we're not getting no information. Crime Stoppers has got 20 grand out there and we still can't get anything new that's useful. Press around here sure has not pushed that Crime Stoppers as a reward, though. Not helping at all. I mean, seriously, there was one feature on Fox the day that the reward came out, which was now at least 4 weeks ago. We're in week 6. It was 4.5 weeks ago. And not another mention, not another news blurb, nothing. So, watch those videos. You got any questions about them, I can go through that with you if you want to ask questions in the comments. But yeah, he was definitely assassinated for his political beliefs. And he was black. But that's still not enough. Since he liked Trump, that's still not enough. He can be as black as he wants. Killer could be white. And they still won't investigate. We have no idea who the killer is, because he was covered head to toe. That's why I say that. It's possible. I mean, who knows? I just know that it's stagnant. But I'm going to tell you just a tiny bit more about Bernell, because I think it's important that people know, especially now that they're calling this in Portland assassination of a Trump supporter. So like I said, we don't know why this happened in Portland, because that information hasn't been shared yet. Neither has it been leaked or insinuated by video. But it is pretty clear the guy was a Trump supporter. Was political reason the main reason behind the shooting? I mean, I don't think anybody's going to deny that. I mean, you saw the celebratory video that they made going, yay, he's dead. I mean, can you imagine if 200 people gathered in Kenosha as Kyle, an hour after Kyle had his hands up and walked to the fucking tank, MRAP, whatever, to say, hey, I shot someone, you know. What they did was they took his rifle, they detained him, they questioned him, they let him go, and then they arrested him later in Illinois. Everybody's fucking, why didn't they shoot him? Why didn't, right? I talked about this before, so you understand. They took his fucking rifle, right? But after the point at which they took him, detained him, and he, you know, they went home, right? Can you imagine if 200 people gather with a megaphone and said, fuck yeah, 2 fucking protester commies are fucking dead. 2 commies. I should just say commies, because they called this dude fascist. Right? 2 of these fucking commies are dead, and a 3rd one's fucked up, with 200 people around. And they cheered. It wasn't like they were all just like in dumb silence, like, oh, I ain't gonna fucking get behind that. They all cheered. Yay! A fascist is dead. Yay! I don't regret killing a Nazi. Can you believe that? Can you imagine what would have happened? I mean, What would happen if that was the other way around? That'd be on the news, on fucking CNN and CNBC constantly for weeks. This is the mindset of the Trump voter. This is the mindset of the racist. This is the... I mean, it would be fucking incessant. It'd be, oh God, they'd be saying it as much as they said fucking George Floyd, the black man who died at the hands of white police in Minnesota when they kneeled on his neck for 8 minutes. They'd be saying it as much as they said that. I only heard about this other shit because of social media. I heard mainstream media talk about that. It was mentioned on Fox, but that's it. But because they're calling that political, which probably is, and I know that Bernell's was political, and I saw several people on Twitter mostly say, man, this is a political killing. This is the first time there's a political, and it's not the first time. So you don't know about Bernell. So let me tell you about him, okay? He was not a straight ticket Republican, all right? He was an independent who supported people that he believed in, all right? He believed in Donald Trump. He talked about it all the time. He went on street corners around Milwaukee with a sign that said, Trump 2020, African Voices for Trump. On the back of the sign, he had some religious stuff. He had other signs with religious stuff because he was a very spiritual, religious person, right? But it was definitely the Trump sign, and the fact that he liked to yell Trump 2020 when he was standing in a corner that got him the hate and got him killed. Bernell never blocked traffic. Bernell never went up to a car, stood in front of a car. He never, when someone disagreed with him, and plenty of people said, fuck you, fuck Trump, you're a piece of shit, even I'm going to come back and get you. And I've heard this shit just while standing there with him. Never did he turn to somebody and say, fuck you. Never did he say to somebody when they didn't agree with him after they would stop and actually speak to him. Never did I hear him say, you're a fucking idiot, you don't know what you're talking about. Never. Now, I can't say I would never fucking do that. I would never lose my patience and maybe... I never seen him do that. Never. And when somebody didn't want to talk anymore, he said, okay, I hope to see you again. Unless they were really rude, then he'd just say, okay, see ya. But he never told somebody they couldn't leave either. And he was always on the sidewalk. So I just want to make that clear too. That he did this all the time. And you could call it protest. You could call it street ministering, because there was a religious aspect to it. But either way, he did it loudly, but he did it without any additional noisemakers, and he did it without impeding anyone's day. If they got stopped at a red light, and he was on a corner where there was a light, yeah, they might have had to hear what he had to say for 30 seconds, but that was the extent of it. Other than that, people were free to talk to him or not talk to him. So I want to make that clear before I say, so what was he about? He supported who he believed in. He believed in Trump. He had his reasons. They are different, actually, than the typical Republican talking points. And I'm just gonna do this real quick. So, you know, he was a big fan of his relationship with Omarosa, and he was a big fan of him sitting down with Kanye West. And his focus on saying why Trump was so important, tying into his religion, was that he believed Donald Trump being in office was a sign of the times from God, not end times. It was a sign of the time for gods that the descendants of the slaves, which is, he said that all the time, but I've actually now started saying it to differentiate for black people who've been in this country their whole life and who were descendants from slavery versus people coming, because it does make a difference in certain contexts. Descendants of the slaves were going to become elevated. It wasn't the word he used. It wasn't rose up. I can't remember exactly how he used to put it, but that it was a time of prosperity. That was what he said. It was a time of prosperity for African Americans, that their reality in this country was changing, and that it was thanks to Donald Trump. And I'm going to say this real quick before anybody else tries to. It was not because Donald Trump is so bad that thanks to him, it had nothing to do with it. He was very pro-Trump. He was also. He also believed that absolutely no fighting or violence was necessary for this time to continue. He just believed that man in general was not good at seeing signs from God, and that he believed that he was, in a sense, a prophet, and that he had seen something that had convinced him that this was a sign, and that's why he wanted to let other people know, because that was his job. That was what he felt that was his religious conviction. He felt he was supposed to do it. So he was pro-Trump for Trump's actions that impressed him. He was pro-God, and in his opinion, he felt that God had made this a new time. Like, because the Bible goes in epochs, times, whatever, right? This was a new era. And he wanted to make the African American community aware that they were living in a new time and that they need to pay attention. But I'd heard him say many times, what do you say, the Israelites, is how children of Israel, is that what he said? Yeah. Children of Israel don't need to rise up or do anything violent. That's not their job. God will handle basically the detractors, and that all they have to do is be self-aware and fix their own problems, their own personal and community problems, and the rest will come. He said it's going to be an amazing time of prosperity if the African American community can recognize that they are now in the time. Now, I'm not a religious person, right? So for me, hearing him say this, I'm like, I hear you, and I understand a lot of people will hear and will respect what you say, and I don't disrespect it, but I also don't, it ain't hitting me the same as that might hit somebody else. And the first time I heard him talk about this was maybe a few months ago. But in the last couple of weeks of his life, I happened to talk to him like 10 out of 14 days. Because he was nearby my house, and because we were getting started on a project, he wanted my help with something, some technology aspect of some research of some publication that he wanted to do, because he had a printing and publishing company. We were working on a project. We didn't get all the way to fruition with it. We had talked about it though, but he told me he was going to be spending the rest of his time for the rest of the month of July doing his street preaching, because he was going down by the beach, by Lake Michigan beach, because he wanted to reach more people. And as he had chosen previously, since the time I had met him about a year ago, to at times take out signs about religion, other times take out the Trump sign, he had been exclusively taking out the Trump sign because he was more and more convinced that I was important for everyone, but especially African Americans, to understand that all the politics and religious views that he had in relation to that, because it was important that they stayed focused and stayed on that. So I saw him a lot in the last couple of weeks. He was a good guy. A lot of people have said that about him, including people that have made a point in the same sentence to say, I did not like his politics, but he was a fucking good guy. He was a good guy to talk to. So, point just being, he had a lot of respect, even from people who didn't like him or didn't agree with him. And even having all that respect, quote, respect, even having all that, still ain't making anybody in that neighborhood give up any fucking information to catch a person or group that's responsible for his death. And now in Portland, he had the tiniest bit of national attention. Ridiculous to me that he didn't get a shit ton of national attention, especially with the way that the killing took place. Watch my other video, get the details. But this shooting in Portland has national attention. So you just watch. And remember what I'm saying now. And maybe I will be wrong. Hopefully I'll be wrong. But where are the other videos? Where are all these people who have all these kernels of information or even disinformation, aside from what people are talking on Twitter that's just bullshit? Where is everybody else? Where is anybody giving any information? Where is there another video? Where is there anything? Let's see how long it takes to get genuine, verifiable information. Because if this is anything like Bernell, shit might just never come. Because He's in an area that's controlled by people that it doesn't behoove to get a lot of truth if the truth is bad for the left. And that is kind of what's going on with Bernell too. He's in an area where it doesn't behoove anybody to bring out the truth because it doesn't help the narrative. And that ain't right. He deserves better than that. He's a good man. He deserves better than that. I mean, everybody's got flaws, but whatever his issues were, they certainly were not anywhere near where you would discredit anything. You know, it's nothing like that. He deserved better than this. That's it.